Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. Story number 1, Berserkir, written by Teller of Tall Tales. The brass statue of a lone human stood guard solemnly at the main entrance of the Danheim shuttle. The figure stood with their fingers laced together atop the large Nordic axe as they gazed down the busy, hovercraft-filled street and parkway leading to the doors they'd guarded. Those who lived here after the calamity paid the statue no mind. After all, every shuttle port had a statue out front. Why was this one so special? Well, my sweet summer child, allow me to tell you the story of a man only known by a title, the Berserkir. The megalomaniacs were an empire built on the backs of slaves. They conquered and enslaved any planet deemed necessary for their test. A brutal bombardment with biological weapons that turned sentients into mindless, bloodthirsty animals that clawed and bit at those they had once called friends and family. But there was one caveat. Like any disease, many individuals of many species would be naturally immune to it by sheer chance. The ideal state if they could survive the infected. I remember the feeling of hopelessness in the shuttle port as the hundreds of still sentient beings gathered there to evacuate. Hopeful, the shuttles would slip past the slavers. You could hear the screams and roars in the infected closing in through the thick plasteel walls. I remember the human that burst through the doors, axe in hand, covered in viscera. I thought he was there to kill us, but no. He marched up to the unoccupied front desk and picked up the intercom microphone before speaking. They know where we are. You can hear them getting closer, can't you? I know you're scared. I know you all want this to be a very bad dream. But this is real, and I need you to listen to me. Looking out over the silent and somber gathering, the human nodded softly before speaking again. The shuttle gates are armored, and each one can hold 30. It may seem like I'm asking you to lock yourselves in a cage. Well, I am, but not for the reason you think. He pounded on the bottom of his axe handle against the tiles, making an echoing thunk noise. I'll hold them off as long as possible. Try to thin the herd as much as possible until the shuttles get here. Please head to the nearest gate and lock both doors behind you, in case any get past me. There was hesitation as the human set down the microphone. Then, seemingly as one, we stood and filed into the armored gate rooms between the landing pad and shuttle port. The things we heard, the things we saw, they're unforgettable. One of the shuttle port security guards had pulled up a feed of the entrance so we could watch, and many did out of morbid curiosity. The human wrapped a chain around the handles of the swinging doors of the shuttle port as he stepped outside, an extra hurdle for the infected to jump before turning to face the street behind him. He reached up to his neck and yanked something away, wrapping it around his hand as he hefted his axe. The infected came as a wave, an unyielding tide of slavering, shrieking bodies that crashed over the human, briefly obscuring him from view as he swung his axe for the first time. For minutes, all we saw was the occasional glint of that massive, curved axe head as it cleaved flesh and split bone with practice, elegant ease. Then, slowly, a small opening in the tide of bodies showed the human's dire situation. They'd lost an eye, blood streamed from the socket and down their face, which was twisted in an expression of burning rage. His clothing was torn, one leg was shaking and unsteady where it had been gashed open. Though many bodies lay piled around the human, the tide of infected seemed endless, and the human was faltering. The axe swung clumsily, biting deep, and not as deep as before as he felled infected being after infected being. Eventually, the tide swallowed him, making him disappear from view as we watched the screaming masses slam against the door to the airport, that feeling of hopelessness settling in again. Then, there was a sound that didn't belong to the screaming masses. A roar bellowed from deep with the writhing horde of monsters. It grew louder and louder until one could swear they felt it shaking the very earth as half a dozen of the infected were flung skyward as the human burst into view amongst the horde. The roar came from them as he, with renewed vigor, the axe came swinging down, cleaving through 4 of the infected in a single blow. The human fought and fought and then fought some more as the horde began to thin, felled by the human's axe and burning fury. With each swing the horde became thinner and thinner until at last the axe's head bit deep into the last infected's head before he was yanked loose. The human stood alone then amongst the carnage and bodies that lie knee-deep around him. He gazed off into the now silent distance. His arms had darkened to a deep purple color, his eye long done bleeding as the human slowly fell to their knees. Putting his hands wide apart on the axe's haft, he raised it above his head, horizontal to the ground. Then he slumped forward, axe still clamped in his lifeless hands. I heard the shuttle touch down outside with a deafening silence that fell with the human. I placed a bundle of roses I had brought to the statue's feet. We'd only found out why the human had done it after he died. A journal found in the apartments registered in his name. The first page, a prayer to the long-forgotten god, now embossed on the plant between the statue's feet. "O Father, make me fast and accurate. Let my blade strike true. Make my arms swifter than any who would seek to destroy me. Grant me victory over my foes. And when my death comes, let not my last thought be if I had only, but rather let the halls of Valhalla ring with my name, and let me die atop a mountain of enemy corpses. Skull." End of story. Story number 2. Bones of the Ancients, written by Uncomfy Unicorn. So, human, what artifacts do you hold within your museums? Zathlor, a Carcolishan, asked his human companion, Jum, as they entered one such museum. Carcolishans resembled a horrifying cross between an octopus, a crab, and a hot air balloon, with multiple centipede-like mouthparts under a large main eye, 4 smaller eyes on flexible stalks surrounding it. To either side of the insectoid jaw were 2 small manipulates, similar to the claws of a coconut crab, and near there was a pair of long, flexible tentacles with small hairs on the ends, an evolutionary remnant of venom-injecting spines now used for sensory purposes. Above all, there was a large fleshy sac covered in veins running with blue blood, the sac containing a naturally formed gas mixture that keeps each one afloat. They are able to release or create the gas to change altitude and find Earth's nitrogen-rich atmosphere quite comfortable, the warm tropics even more so. Well, there's the old pots and tools ancient civilizations made, old paintings and statues, cool rocks and old technology, and some cool rooms where you can look at stuff from space, like meteorites. But coolest of all are the fossils. There are whole rooms dedicated to them, and they are crazy, the human Jim replied, eagerly. Fossils? You mean old bones and exoskeletons? How could those be interesting? Nothing larger than a Terran mammoth has ever been found on any planet, and those are simple mollusks and crustaceans. Zathlor replied, his eye stalks extending slightly in confusion. Oh no, some animals got enormous, the dinosaurs especially. There were horrific carnivores larger than a truck, and herbivores so big they could stand taller than a 3-story building. Jim smiled excitedly, anticipating his friend's reaction to the ancient colossus. Zathlor's eye stalks extended so far, Jim was almost worried that they would pop off as the alien sat in silence for a few moments. Wait, you said how big? Nah, but nothing like that could ever survive. The weight would just shatter any exoskeleton it had, or cause an endoskeleton to crumple the moment it tried to stand. Zathlor was slightly agitated at this point, trying to figure out how something so big could exist. As the two made it inside, Zathlor froze as the titanous skeleton of what a pedestal labeled a Triceratops stood locked in battle with an even larger beast, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The horned beast seemed to be bellowing in defiance at the roaring predator before it, the size of the monster's large teeth making Zathlor almost expel his gases through a propulsion siphoned terror. But it was what he could see behind them that truly astonished him. Multiple skeletons of enormous beasts, some in front of aquatic backgrounds, some soaring above, smaller ones darting between the legs of one with a ribcage large enough to hold the largest fossilized creature found on his planet. A tail so long that it almost reached the opposite wall as its neck extended to the point the head would be level with the second floor above. And each one had a plaque, a photo, something explaining what it was. So it was much more extreme than the Ice Age fossils he had seen previously, which were impressive in and of themselves.
What?
Zathlor tried to speak, but he could barely fire his neuron clusters as he gazed at the titans surrounding him, all posed to be eating, fighting, moving, living. It was as if he was gazing through time itself. He could almost see the flesh covering the bones, the blood gushing from lethal wounds as predator and prey exchanged blows. The screeching and roaring of an ancient world, lost to the cataclysmic event.
What killed them?
Zathlor finally said. A few things, changing climate, volcanic eruptions, but the final blow was an asteroid 6 miles in diameter. It was the most recent mass extinction. Come on, there's supposed to be a film about how the dinosaurs might have lived. Let's go watch, Jim said, far too casually.
Wait, what do you mean the most recent mass extinction? How many has your planet had?
Zathlor exclaimed, following Jim to the theater. By both 6. Now shush, it's about to start, Jim said, putting one finger over his fleshy mouth covering. Zathlor clung to the perch extended from the seat, all 5 eyes fixed on the central area where the hologram projector was situated. The next half an hour was a blur. Enormous scaled, bird and feathered creatures raced across the screen, some fighting, some raising children, some moving in herds, some putting on a mating display. Some swam, some walked, some ran, some climbed, some flew. But to see these giants essentially brought back to life in front of him, to feel the thunderous bellows shake the very room, was something he could never forget. After finishing exploring the museum, they brought some fossils at the gift shop. Nothing too crazy, just some small bone fragments and an ammonite bracelet, which Zathlor had wrapped tightly around one of his tentacles. It wasn't that crazy to Jim, but to Zathlor, it was insane that they would sell these bones of the ancients. End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.